Hello, everybody. My name is Mariyah, your host. Thank you for joining me today. I wanted to start by talking about Self Indulgent and how it came to be and why I want to create this community and space. So, over the last probably 8 years of my life, I think self-love and self-care have become huge buzzwords. I mean, you hear it everywhere. It's all over social media. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I have no idea what it meant, how to even internalize what that meant. Like, I would kind of hear it and feel nothing. I understand self-love, to love yourself, but it's a lot deeper. It's a lot deeper than that. Like, we hear about alignment, finding peace, finding your purpose, but what does that actually mean? And how can we find it when we're all very different and we're all on very different parts of our journey? I am finally coming to understand that it is a lot of work. There are so many layers to self-love, self-care. It's very complex. It's going to be different for everyone. So naturally, I found it really hard to start this podcast and to create and figure out how to structure it and try to talk about the layers and the work and make it all neat and in a bow. And I realized quickly that's not going to happen. It is messy, and I don't think it's meant to be perfectly tied up in a bow. We're all changing, we're all evolving, and we're all very different. In this community, my hope is that something always speaks to you, or somebody else you know that you might want to share the message with, and like, wow, they could really use that right now. Or even if it kind of helps you with others in your life and interpersonal relationships that you have. Self-love isn't about a morning routine, a night routine, although those can be supportive tools for some people. Self-love is about meeting yourself where you're at, accepting it, nurturing that, and really listening to yourself. And it is so important to strengthen that muscle of being able to hear yourself and to listen to what you need moment to moment, because that's always going to change. You know yourself the best. So it can become extremely difficult to continue to hear and prioritize your voice. You know, we have our peers, friends, family, society, every day, the media, and the less aware we are, the easier it is for those things to be able to quiet and bury your voice, your inner voice, to where you can't even hear it anymore, or you forget that it's there, that you have it and that it works. So how do you continue to hear your voice? I really want to build a community that is here to support each other and better each other. For some people, they do need an AM and PM routine because they were having trouble functioning on a day-to-day basis and they needed added structure, right? It may have been hard for them to get out of the bed, to brush their teeth. So routines, there's a lot of power that people can find in that. But that doesn't mean that's the case for everyone. For some of us, our relationships can really control and poison our lives if it's not the right one. You know, it can have us forget who we are in some cases for some people. For some of us, family members make us feel worthless. For some of us, our careers are sucking the life out of us. For some of us, it's all of those things. What all of these things have in common, though, is that outside circumstances are causing extreme internal turmoil, disconnecting us from our beauty, our joy, our passion, our gifts, our love, our voice. It is time to indulge in ourselves again. It's time to get to know yourself without all the noise, the influence. It's time to love and trust yourself. So let's get into it. I want to give a little bit more background about myself to give more context as to how this all came about, and maybe even like where I am at in my process right now, because it is definitely an ongoing battle. When I think about the pain and suffering that I've experienced in life, at the root of it all, there's always been feeling insecure, lonely, misunderstood, unlikable. So real like having to do with worth. That has been the root cause of a lot of my pain and suffering. I think when I went to school, just starting school, I want to say maybe like, middle school, I think I was still very innocent, fun, silly. Like I wanted to have fun. I wanted to enjoy time with others. But the second that I started middle school, that there was a huge shift. I mean, an intense shift. I was often the butt of the joke without even realizing it. But once I did start realizing that, I was the joke or people were actually laughing at me, that definitely created it was very confusing for me at the time because I immediately started thinking, what am I doing wrong? All I want to do is make friends, which I think a lot of us experience. I did grow up in a pretty strict household. I wanted so deeply to have community and bond with others and have friends. I think that that's something that I've always deeply wanted and knew about myself, that like I work well in a community. I think community is extremely important, and it was extremely hard to do that in a strict household. I think that's just always been part of who I am. I wanted best friends to experience life with, but that never really happened or lasted. I think a lot of my friendships growing up consisted of me sacrificing myself and who I really was in order to be liked and accepted by others, or even just like remember or thought of. Now, I'm not saying I was a complete pushover. I definitely got into arguments. I definitely participated in gossip. I did always remember feeling so guilty afterwards. Even if what I said was true, like even if, like now we talk about staying 10 toes behind what we say. And I think I've always had an issue with that. And I think part of that is recognizing that emotions change, feelings change. Sometimes when you go to bed, feeling a certain way about something, and then you wake up the next day and you feel different. I think I was having trouble with that, and I think that speaks a lot to tying a lot of identifying heavily with my emotions. And because when you identify heavily with your emotions, you are going to, whatever you're saying in that moment, or feeling in that moment, you are very, very, very tied to. So it can be really confusing when you're waking up the next day and now you feel differently. Although that's really normal. But at the time, I did not think that way. Like I felt very guilty. I often felt like I was stooping or down to the people's level who made me feel the way that I felt. I definitely had a shameful relationship with anger. I felt a lot of shame around anger. If I said or did something out of anger or spite, I think I really did hate myself for it, because I started to feel like the people who made me feel that way. So I think that having all that shame and distrust in myself created a lot of feelings of worthlessness. Now I've grown a lot since middle school and high school. I'm currently a third-year doctoral student in clinical psychology. I am doing a dual degree master's program for human sexuality as well. It was no surprise to me that psychology was my field of choice. I value human connection and community in life. I value deep and long-lasting relationships, but I realized that it's really, really hard to sustain those things when you're at war with yourself. I think I've been at war with myself for a very long time, and I am finally waving the white flag. And a huge part of my growth has actually been moving out of a victim mindset. I'm going to get into that in next week's episode. I have a lot of thoughts on the victim mindset, and there is some interesting new research around that. So I am excited to share that with you next week. But the process was really, really just freeing and liberating for myself. But it did not solve everything. Not even close. Remember, layers. And as I'm speaking with you today, I have definitely just gone through the most challenging 2 years of my life. It's so crazy when I think about life's journey so far for myself. The challenges get harder and then you do keep getting stronger, and it can be very painful at times if you allow yourself to go down certain holes. People talk about their shadow selves. I don't think there's enough explanation on what that really means, but it can cause a lot of suffering. There's always potential for growth and coming out of that, but it can be very hard. And that's why I think it's so important to have support. So I'm finally at a point where I can say that I'm grateful for the last 2 years. I'm really grateful for all of the growth that I'm seeing now. I'm so excited to share with you all what I've learned and just how to start showing up for yourself, to make peace with yourself, to be confident enough to have your own back and that be enough, to have healthy and fulfilling relationships, to break cycles and dynamics that have been there maybe even before you were born. I am so grateful and excited to be starting this community. We are always in this together, so please join our Self Indulgent community. It is time to empower your mind and elevate your soul. Thank you for spending your time with me, and I can't wait to talk with you all in next week's episode. Have a blessed and intentional week.